To yet another special episode of Ro-JoSports. I'm your host, Rob. I'm going to corner kick it over to my main man, Joe. What's up, buddy?
And I'm gonna header it in or bicycle kick it in or however way I can get in the net.
And we're going
How's it
to,
going?
good, we're going to hit you with a throw in, Coach, to Coach Todd Morris of the Marietta Tigers boys soccer program. How's it going, Coach?
I'm doing great tonight, guys. I appreciate you having me back again.
Yeah, I think you are our first uh, re-interview, aren't right, Joe? I don't,
First, second timer. Okay,
First,
Yeah.
awesome.
or no, yeah, that's right,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, first, second timer. Yeah, we'll have
Good
to
deal.
we'll keep in touch as the season progresses and things like that. I'd like to come down and do a preseason preview for
Yeah.
what
Sure.
you guys have going on down there for the 2026 season. Bunch of new
It's sneaking up
faces.
on us. Yes.
Yeah, bunch of new faces. I think you lost what I want to say 8 seniors last year.
I think 8 seniors. Yeah. And I think five starters, 5 or 6 starters. So yeah, there's some holes to fill. I don't know. We'll get into that later, so I don't want to go off on a tangent on
Hmm.
that. But yeah, it's definitely that's the beauty or curse of high school sports is you know year to year. You kind of know what you're going to get, but then at the same time, you've got those years where you lose 13 or you lose 8, and then there's years that you lose one. So just a matter of putting the pieces together and see what we can do.
Well, speaking of the beauty of the sport, one thing that I noticed, my daughter, she takes swim lessons down by the Jerry Brock Stadium, and I
Hmm.
and I couldn't help but notice on my drive down past the stadium, a bunch of big white boxes going on down there. I had Coach Ben Schenkel. He was on the show here talking about the lighting fundraiser and things like that, and apparently you guys did well on it because the lights are down there.
Yeah, we had a successful. I know Ben talked a lot about that. Back in February, March, or whenever you had him on, and the lights in Jerry Brock Field. We put them. They were originally installed in 1999. So they've been through 27 seasons. They were starting to show their use. I know Ben had all kind of documents for you about they came and measured the candle wattage output, and we were nowhere near where we needed to be. And new lights we're looking at about 180,000 because they could still use the poles that we had in place. It was just a matter of replacing the lights with the latest and greatest LED stuff. This has been like a 3 or 4 5 year project now that we've been working on. And Meredith City Schools last fall agreed to pay 140,000 of the 180 to $190,000 project. The two soccer programs were tasked with raising the other 40 or 50, depending on where exactly it fell. So we started a project just with locals and local businesses, and me being around so long, and having access to so many alumni. The alumni were great in the process. I don't want to give away too much dollar amount and who did what, because we're kind of going to talk about that during the fall when we kind of unveil the lights. But the alumni were great. Local businesses were great, and we were able to raise the money that we needed to raise. Lights were purchased. Lights were fabricated, and they were delivered late last week. That they've already started the project. They've got the new panel up, and they'll probably have the crane down there. Probably not this week because of the holiday, but looking at next week, having the crane there to just take the old lights off, put the new lights on, and we'll be ready to go for when we're down there in August. So a successful project. Couldn't have done it without the support of our community and our Merida soccer family, and of course Merida City Schools. With the biggest chunk of the cost. But proud of the way the soccer programs both work to get the other funds raised.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to coming down and seeing a game there with, me not being a big soccer guy growing up. I guess I never really noticed how dark it was. for the players and such. But whenever Ben was on here and he showed like the graphics of like the
Yeah.
percentage of the field that it actually covers and stuff, I'm like, I didn't even notice that. That's wild.
Yeah, and you kind of, I mean, the last 2 years, I'd say you could notice it was darker. But when you're down there and you're in it, you're not really. But then about 3 years ago, if you would watch game film from like 2018, 2019 to 2023, you're like, wow, that's darker, and it just got progressively worse the last couple of years. So much needed addition. There's other improvements that we're making to the field, the area this fall that I can't share yet because it still has to be board approved.
Mhm.
Even though we raised the money for it and it's a donation, the school board still has to um, approve that. But looking forward to getting it should be bright down there. It should be bright down there this fall.
That's good. Now you won't have to rely so heavily on the parking lot crew that you have there celebrating
Exactly.
with their headlights and everything else.
Exactly. I will tell you a quick story. In 1990, take you back way back to 1990. We were playing Lancaster in a tournament game in Lancaster, and their field had no lights, but it was fine because it was a 4 p.m. start time, so we're fine. The referees were late, so the game didn't get started till late. The game goes to extra time, and in extra time, no one wins. So the game ends up going to penalty kicks because this is a tournament game. The field was so dark that they actually brought cars in each side of the field and behind the goal, and they had the headlights shining on the field so we could complete the penalty kicks, and one team could lose and one team could win, and we wouldn't have to go back to Lancaster and play just the penalty kicks the next day. So there is precedence for using cars to help with a Merida High School soccer match.
Yeah, if it's not cars, it's golf carts.
Exactly.
Go ahead, Joe.
I was just saying that's just like Ohio. It's an Ohio thing. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yep.
It could be football.
100%. Yeah. Yep. 100%.
So talking about penalty kicks, last year, unfortunately, that's how the season came to a close. Last year in the playoffs, correct?
Yes,
And
correct.
but this year, plan on kicking things off. Who do you kick the season off against this year?
We always start the season. The Ohio High School Athletic Association has I guess you call it a program that they started about 5 or 6 years ago called Football Friday Night, FUTBOL, soccer, Football Friday Night, where soccer can open the season 1 week before football opens. And it's on Friday night. So the idea of it is, soccer gets the spotlight. If they don't play in the football stadium, they can play in the football stadium and draw the crowd, blah, blah, blah. So we always open up at, we don't use Don Drum and we don't use Davola, but we open up at Merida College's soccer field on the blue turf. And it will be us and Warren, like it was last year. And we did this in 2021 as well with Warren. So we open up with Warren on Football Friday night. I believe that is Friday. I got a calendar right here because I was working on stuff because I'm always working. Friday, August 14th is when we open the season officially with Warren. It's a girls boys doubleheader. Girls are at 6, we're at 8. So, and we start August 1 officially. So we don't have much time to officially prepare before hitting with Warren. Yes,
a little less than 2 weeks.
A little less than 2 weeks. Yeah. So we have a lot going on in July. Like I was telling you before we started recording, we do a bunch of stuff in June as far as using our summer contact days that the OHSAA allows. We also run our own youth camp that we have the current players work at. I love that. I think it's good for our guys to give back to where they, kind of started playing and also start to build that relationship with the youth players because, we want them to be, down in Davola this fall and they see the guys on our game field. It's like, well, that's the guy that, was teaching me during camp. I want to go watch him. So it's also a, kind of a recruiting tool. So we love doing our youth camp. And then we always give the guys the week of the 4th off just for holidays, vacation, all that stuff, which works out so well this year because it's 100 degrees and you don't get much done training wise that wise. But then our boys go to we always do a summer team camp at Merida College with Coach Bergen and now Coach Holdren, which works out really well because Coach Holdren Colton, of course, was my assistant for 10 years, so he knows how we like to play, what to train. So we have a camp at Merida College, and then we go to a couple of showcases. One in Logan, one is a 3-day one in Strongsville at the end of the month, where we'll play 2 half matches on Friday, 3 half matches on Saturday, 2 half matches on Sunday. So we're getting about 4 total games in Strongsville and a couple in Logan before we even get started on August 1. So lots of stuff in July before we actually get going August 1st. But it's just amazing how quickly you were talking about losing and penalty kicks to Fairfield Union. I tried to put that out of my mind, so I appreciate the reminder there.
I'll just
no, but you always remember those more than the wins, because you're always thinking the what ifs and the all that stuff. So it's
well, the thing is though is like how you guys closed out the season though. Like if memory serves me right, I believe. And this was going back when we first interviewed you right after the season. But if memory serves me correct, I think you went 10-2 in your last 12 games or something in order to get there.
We started 2-6-2 on the season, and the 6 losses because I remember one of my seniors telling me the 6 losses is more losses than they had their freshman, sophomore, and junior years combined to start the season. So we started 2-6-2. We won our last 8 regular season matches and then beat Chillicothe in the first round of the tournament before losing to Fairfield Union in penalty kicks. So we did get it figured out. Last year, just to touch on last year, rough start. Lost 13 seniors from the year before and a really, really talented class. That we lost. So we were trying to fill holes anyway. And then, no coach, could never make excuses, and it was what it was. But we were injury, we just had injuries like crazy the first half of the year. And most of the games that we lost early, we lost to Athens, we had lost to Alexander. We ended up, playing them again and, routing Athens 5-1 and, beating Alexander 2-0. So we had good wins in there. We had a nice win over a Logan team, that had their best season ever in their school history. We had a nice win at Riverview, and they were defending, Division 5 state champions. So we started to figure it out, and we're playing really well. And Fairfield Union just, obviously going to penalty kicks. It's just, the luck of how things might happen. And, they were able to eke it out and, end our season. But we lose, I think 7 or 8 seniors off of the class from last year. So we've got some holes to fill. I, of course, have, 1 or 2 or 9 ideas in my head of, what it might look like.
Or 11.
Yes. Exactly. So I'm excited to get to camp here next week and, see the guys, actually train and then get to Logan and, have those, games to play with and just kind of, and everybody, kind of, I don't want to say makes fun of me, but when we go to these showcases, it's like, okay, well, here's our starting point. We're going to start like this. And then they go out on the field and I am sitting in a chair with a notebook and, what do? You can't make a lot of changes in a 1-day event where you're playing, 4 40-minute games and you're just trying to make notes on, what might work, what might not work, and then head to the training picks the next week and, start building towards the season. So obviously we're always optimistic because that's just what we do. we always like to say that we don't rebuild, we reload. Um, I know we got off of that rough start last year, and looking at our schedule, we kind of have a rough start as far as we always try to make the most competitive schedule we can. But we open with Warren, and then we're at Athens, which is always a tough place for us to play. Then we go to Wheeling Park, which is a large West Virginia school. That's a tough
Mhm.
place to play.
I've
We
heard
go
of it.
to we go to Circleville. We go to we go to St. Clairsville, which had a 17-win season, and then we have Fairfield Union, and then Warren again. So our first 5 or 6 matches are pretty tough. So that could kind of, hopefully it's not 2-6 like we started last year. That we can stay healthy and get some good results. But our schedule, I'm looking over it here. Athens twice again, a good West Muskegon team that won 16 games and a district last year. At Logan, we've got Steubenville again. Is coming to us. We have Parkersburg back on our schedule for the first time in 5 years. We have Marysville out of Columbus coming down. So, we have a really competitive schedule, which, we always want to do and hope it prepares us for, a deep postseason run. And we also hope we can pick up some wins during the regular season too, because it makes it much easier to train, the day after a win than, those losses. So looking forward to it, even after all these years, the grind is still fun to me and
Yeah.
trying to get it figured out. So, can't wait.
I know,
Can't wait.
Losing 8 seniors last year. That being said, you still have returners. You have Finn, starting
Absolutely.
goalkeeper.
Yep.
This will be his 3rd year starting, Joe, and he's going into his junior year. So
Mhm.
he started as a freshman, if I'm not
Yeah. mistaken.
mistaken.
Correct. Yes.
And then you have Grayson Moat coming back, and then you have Eli Lemley getting ready to join in to that crew, and Cole is a winger, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so, how many total returners would you say you have?
I know that I think we have starting wise, and we had so
That's
many
what I
different
meant,
starting lineups last year that it was weird, that we really could, except for the last half of the season, we could never really get into any kind of set, kind of sets. But you mentioned Finn. Having a standout goalkeeper is kind of your get out of jail free card. You can afford to take chances and know that you've got somebody that can bail you out. So having Finn is key. You mentioned Cole Bergen as a senior. Will Holler, who will be a senior, I think will play a much bigger role for us this year. Kingston McMahon, who missed most of the second half of last year with a foot injury that he suffered during a football game, because he's also the place kicker for the football team. Bad snap. He tried to run the ball, so he was falling on it and got his ankle rolled up on, and cost him about 6 weeks of the football season. Those high ankle sprains are tough.
Nasty.
But Kingston's back. Trying to think of what else. Nate McElroy, who's a senior, played some minutes for us last year. You mentioned Finn. You mentioned Eli. Grayson, of course, stepped in as a freshman last year and was great for us. And then we saw what he did for, Gardner and the basketball program
Yeah.
too. So Grayson's going to have a heck of a high school career in both sports when it's all said and done. I'm trying to think of what else top of my head. Carson Hamilton is back as a defender. So we got guys that were forced into varsity roles last year that might not have been quite ready, that are going to, have to play a role. And it's just a matter of, us being coaches to try to figure out what works, what system ultimately works the best for us, and try to put the guys in the, the best position to be successful. But, I like the pieces we have, and we have a really good freshman class coming in too. I think we got 9 freshmen coming in. So, the cupboard's not bare. It's just,
Yeah.
what are we going to look like ultimately? I know that, our district's going to be really competitive again. Warren's going to be really good. Ben Atkinson, their coach, which was my assistant for a few years, is doing a great job out there. Fairfield Union has almost everybody back from last year. Chillicothe is going to be much better than they were last year. Athens is always really tough. Athens also got a new assistant coach that was my assistant coach for the past 9 years. Keith Schwindeman, because he lives in Athens, so he has a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, and after last year, it was kind of like I've got to be in Athens more and in Marietta less. So he retired from coaching, and Athens pulled him out of retirement to be their assistant coach, which I get it. Athens High School is 5 minutes from his house, and Marietta's 55 minutes from his house. So the district will be very competitive again. I like what we have. I don't think any of our matches on paper are going to be matches that you think, well, that's an easy win. So we're going to have to really see the season out. But I like what I've seen so far in June. Just the guys getting together and playing some open fields, and the limited stuff we've actually done with them. And we're going to see what work gets put in July, and see how we can roll into August.
Yeah, you mentioning the your assistants going and coaching here and coaching there. What you're saying is you kind of play a Nick Saban kind of role, where all your coaches end up going to various other places to try and coach against.
Yeah, which I guess is a badge of honor. I guess, and I should feel good about. And I do. I love them all, and I'm so proud of them all, and they've all done and we're all great friends, and we all still have our own group chat, and and all that. So, but it just gives us the opportunity to start to bring more guys along. And we brought Gabe Slaughter on a couple years ago to start his coaching career, whatever it may be. We're adding a couple more new ones this fall that we're still trying to get board approved, but to fill Keith's role. It's a revolving door. We were very fortunate that, we had Keith for the last 9 years. Before Colton left 2 years ago to go to Marietta College, I had him for 10 years. You had me and Keith and Colton together for 8 years. We were all together. So we had that, we have that time together, but, people move on, and, they're all going to do, Colton's doing great at MC, Ben is doing great things at Warren. Keith's going to be a great asset for Athens. So, and actually it's weird. Athens' first match is with us. Our second match of the year going to Athens will be his first match with Athens. So that'll be interesting. And he doesn't even like green, like green was never his color. So, yeah. So, I mean, it makes me feel good, obviously, that they, are going to go out and succeed. But at the same time, they're all great coaches, and, we all became really good friends, over the years. Colton and Keith, of course, I got to coach in high school too. So that was an extra bonus, getting to work with them as coaches after coaching them. But, they're all going to do great things.
You mentioning Gabe Slaughter, one of your assistant coaches. I don't know if you recognize or not, but the hype video I made for the interview.
Yes,
I found it.
His goal against Chillicothe. Yes.
Yeah, I went back in the old Marietta Encyclopedia huddle.
Yes.
And found two goals.
That was a Gabe goal against Chillicothe. Yes, from 2021. Yeah.
I messaged that to him. He was like, "How did you even find that?" So the internet, man, it's amazing. It never goes away.
It's never gone.
It's never gone. But yeah, I don't know if you picked up on that or not.
I did. Yes, I did. It's awesome.
So I don't know if you noticed or not. Lately, there's a really big soccer tournament going on in the world. I don't know, unless you've been living under a rock.
I've heard. Yes, I've heard.
Really, really big. So I just wanted to kind of touch base with you, get your wisdom, expertise, see what you're thinking about everything. But one question I have for you.
Sure.
Like, obviously you have your Argentinas, you have France, Ronaldo's still in it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, two questions. One,
Okay.
do you think home field advantage plays a part in the World Cup as much as it does, say, for, like an NFL game or like anything like that? Do you think America hosting kind of gives the USA a little bit of a leg, a step, a little, push?
I think it does. And I think home field, especially, and I know that this year, we're not playing in any like really high altitude because I know that, a couple years ago for qualifying, there was a game in Denver and, it was a CONCACAF game and I forget who they were, Panama maybe. Um, and they were dealing with the altitude, obviously, and then it was snowing. Obviously, we don't have any of that in the middle of July in the U.S., but I think home field plays a role, especially like I talked about high altitude. Mexico getting to play in Mexico City, very high altitude stadium. Teams struggle to play there, so I think Mexico has had the advantage getting to play games in Mexico, and I think the U.S. I think we've been fortunate to have got to stay on the West Coast, with the two games in LA and the game in Seattle. So not a lot of traveling for them. And, used to the U.S. climate is definitely huge. And, you know, uh, who says America is not a soccer country? I mean, look at the stadiums, look at the, when they do the cutouts on the Fox broadcast and, they're showing parks in Kansas City and parks in Chicago where there's thousands of people, gathered around to watch a game. I love any kind of sport, any kind of tournament where teams play for their country because I don't think there's anything better than playing for your country. And you get this World Cup and you see the passion that the different nationalities have for their team, whether they're here in the U.S. inside the stadiums or again they show the cutaways to 100,000 people, in some park in Brazil, watching Brazil play. I mean, it truly is a global game, and I think it's done well for the U.S. and kind of bringing the country together. And I don't get political. I'm never going to get political, but you hear a lot of negativity about the U.S. right now. I have family that lives in Europe, and they poke the bear all the time about the U.S. being the laughing stock of the world, blah blah. And then you see on social media, all these foreigners, posting videos to Snapchat or TikTok about what a great place this is, and you see Europeans saying, "Oh my God, we can get ice in our Cokes, or free refills, and all the stuff that isn't you don't when you list the good things about this country, you don't necessarily think that we get free refills on Coke, but to see people from foreign countries, say good things about the U.S., be it the people they run into or the cities or the landmarks, I think that's done well for our country. I think so far we've been good hosts, Canada and Mexico as well. And the games have been phenomenal, but all the knockout games yesterday, two games decided in stoppage time, two games going to penalty kicks. France was very dominant in their match today, but you know, to me, how you can't love the game with the even if you're not a soccer person, to sit and watch and see the emotion and the drama unfold and the ebbs and flows and the emotional roller coaster that soccer can take you on. It's hard to see why you couldn't get to become a fan of the game. And I get not knowing the rules and offside and the low scoring, and all of that, but I think you can still appreciate playing for your country and the passion that citizens have for their country and watching their teams compete and and those two penalty kicks sessions yesterday, the drama of that, which part of it is built in, with the long walk for the kicker from midfield to the penalty spot. So there is that drama that's built in. But again, such an emotional roller coaster, and I think the tournament's been great so far. And you mentioned a couple of teams, France and Argentina. France, I think, has been the best team so far in the tournament. Those two met in the finals 4 years ago when Messi finally got his World Cup. So I would not be surprised if it's those two teams playing for the cup on the 19th.
All right, Coach. I mean, since the last time we met, I've had a crash course because I've been watching soccer. I even watched the Premier League and
Mm-hmm.
everything. And the Tottenham Spurs, they stunk it up this year. But other than that,
They had a bad season. Yes.
yeah, they did. But I just wanted your opinion on the foul call in the Germany game when Germany scored the goal, and they said he interfered with the
He
goal.
impeded the goalkeeper. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because as soon as the referee on the field sent it to the VAR, I texted my group chat that has Colton and Keith in it, and I said, if this gets taken away, that's really soft. And then it got taken away, and I thought it was really I thought it was harsh.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's yeah, and especially being the way it ended for Germany not going through, and Paraguay, ending up going through, that it hurts even worse. But VAR, it's had its ups and downs since it was introduced in the Premier League, 6-7 years ago, and it that kind of call. I don't know if, and again, to have the ability to have 40 camera angles and slow it down and all that stuff. I mean, it looks much worse in slow motion than it does in real time.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought Germany, I thought that was harsh, and I didn't think that was one that should have been. I don't think it was a clear and obvious error
Yeah.
to make to overturn the call.
Yeah, I was thinking that too because he still had a chance to play the ball. That was my when I was watching the game.
Yeah.
Because didn't watch soccer for a long time, but I watched it this year, and there's been times where guys will dive at the guy and they call it, and that's
Yeah.
like, well, that's obvious. But this was kind of like
Yeah, and
he kind of just like held him for a sec, and then he could have a chance to get it, and he didn't get it.
and to me, the goalkeeper actually kind of initiated the contact.
Yeah.
That's looking at it that way. So I thought it was very harsh on Germany to have that one taken off the board, and then obviously for them to be sent home 45 minutes later is just adds salt to the wound. But I was not a fan of that call being overturned. Yeah, because I didn't think it was. VAR for those kind of situations are for clear and obvious errors, and I didn't think that was a clear and obvious error.
Also, for those of you that don't know, Germany was the high scoring team in the first round. They had 7 goals against Curacao, which I didn't like because they're kind of like running it up. It looked like a little bit.
Yeah, and I got that at the time, because goal differential can mean a lot if and for group standings. But I thought Paraguay, really frustrated Germany yesterday. Paraguay sat in a low block, and had like 2 lines of 4 and would keep 11 guys behind the ball, and Germany just didn't deal with that very well. When a team's playing in a low block, you've got to have some 1v1 creativity. You've got to be able to switch the ball from side to side quickly, and they were just kind of hanging out in the wide areas and just knocking crosses into the box, which Paraguay had 10 guys behind the ball. So Paraguay did a nice job frustrating them and just looking to hit them on the counter, because I think Germany had like 71% of the ball. So they really dominated possession, but possession with no goals is just is what it is. So not that Paraguay didn't deserve to go through, because they executed their game plan, but that was still harsh for Germany for sure.
It just felt like those 2 games yesterday, like Germany played Paraguay's game instead of playing Germany game,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
trying to
Yeah,
attack and
Paraguay.
execute. And then Netherlands did
Yep,
the same exact thing. It's Morocco.
yep, yep,
Netherlands is always the attacking team, right? That's what my
yep.
boss would tell
Yeah,
me.
Netherlands went to playing five in the back, which I did not understand,
Yeah.
and then I heard it this morning. The Fox guys talking about it. Zlatan talking about it. You have your identity. You're no one would argue. I think that the Netherlands didn't have the better team on paper, and to totally change their tactics going into the game, I thought was kind of odd. And you know, I'm sure their manager, their coach had a reason, why he chose to do so. And who am I who am I to question, his tactics? But it just seemed odd from an outsider that kind of understands the game and how you attack, where you add a fifth defender for really no reason at all. It seems so. It was odd, and they got the penalty kicks, and talk about
Tough
bad
break.
penalty kicks. That
Yeah.
was we
You get a save and
not
you knock it in
not
anyway.
clinical. Yeah, not clinical last night at all. But
But
that's
it's
what makes the game fun. That's
because like
sports.
the Netherlands team's always that's their thing. They score goals.
Yep.
Isn't that their style for like what they teach their players and everything, like their
Yeah,
team style?
they seem the they want to be on the front foot. They want to have the ball. They want to be aggressive in attack. And like I said, for some reason that's only known in their tactics room. They decided, we're kind of going to put a fifth defender on and play a little differently, and it just didn't pay off for them.
There was another game I wanted to ask you about. How did you think Brazil did in their game?
Um, Brazil, I like I said a few minutes ago, I think France has been the class of the tournament so far. Argentina is right there, and obviously the defending champions. But other countries, I think you can put in that mix two wins. Spain, Brazil, has the pedigree. They do have the talent on the pitch. Um, I would not be surprised if Brazil finds its way into the finals. And there's also the opportunity that there's going to be some country that decides. That's the beauty of sports, is on any given night. I mean, Germany should not have lost that
No,
match.
no,
Should not have happened. So you don't know. Maybe France gets it. Because France is attacking three. Barcola and Mbappe and Dembele. I mean, those top three are just stupid, ridiculous. So they were. I mean, they could have had 8 goals today. Just unlucky. But who's to say they don't get into a match against somebody that sits in a low block like Paraguay did, and they can't find the goal. That just things happen. So Brazil, I'd put up there. Spain. I know everybody is rooting for, well, not everybody, but I know that there's a people are kind of hoping for England to finally have that cup after 50 whatever years. And and Harry Kane's obviously an outstanding forward, and has played well in this tournament. So maybe England. Portugal, lots of people were happy that Lionel Messi finally got his World Cup 4 years ago. Are they thinking the same thing for Ronaldo to finally get his World Cup? I know that he had a couple goals in the knockout stage. But I don't know. Portugal just doesn't seem,
yeah, they don't look like
you know,
they're not like Argentina. Everyone's like
no,
going
and I
around
think
Messi, and
to
then
me,
Portugal.
Cristiano is better if he just stay in the box, and I think he's really dropping back in the midfield more to try to pick the ball up farther from goal and kind of link up play, and that's just not him. Get in the box, score goals, and I think he's pressing a little because obviously he probably knows this is it as far as the world stage for the World Cup. And and I think that was a fun thing in the first the first round of group stage where you had Mbappe scored twice, and everyone's on Mbappe, and then Messi's like, well, I'll just score three, and then they're like, and then Holland scored twice, and then Harry Kane scored twice, and Ronaldo didn't score, and everyone's like, Ronaldo sucks now. He's no good. And then Messi scored two more, and then Ronaldo's like, well, I'll score twice. So, superstars. It's fun to watch the stars. In any sport. You always knew what you were going to get with Jordan or LeBron. Kobe. That they're going to rise to the occasion, and they hear the chatter and the tweets and the all that stuff. So it's been fun to watch the quote unquote stars of the game, take center stage and do what they do. The Messi's and Harry Kane and Ronaldo and Mbappe, just having great tournaments.
Yeah, the Golden Boot. It's up for grabs.
Yeah, I think no Mbappe twice today. I think he's at 7 now, or is he at 6 with Messi? So yeah, him and Messi were tied at 6 for a while, but I don't know if that put Mbappe above him or not. But just fun talent to watch.
My team that I picked to win it all was Norway, because Holland. When I was watching the Premier League, like he's my guy.
Yeah.
He's a monster. And
what a character too.
Yeah.
He's great. Great character, and he did what he needed to do to get them to advance today. So that's fun to see a country that had never won a bracket game to advance. So, and that's another team where if he gets hot and has a couple opportunities, that's a team that could keep going through. So stars do make a difference, and when you have those very talented offensive players, number 9s, forwards, Harry Kane, Holland, Mbappe plays more of a wing, but those dangerous attacking players, on any given night, things can happen, and that's, again, like I said, that's what makes sports beautiful.
You mentioning the players that we've been hearing so far with Holland and Ronaldo and Messi. There's a question that I asked Joe last week that kind of blew up a little bit in the world of TikTok, that I want to ask you,
Okay.
and get your opinion on this. If you were starting a team from scratch, okay, and
Okay.
would you start that team with Messi or Ronaldo, and why?
I would start it with Messi. I think he's a more dynamic. I mean, it's so tough because it also depends on what kind of a team do you want to be, and what's your game model going to be. I think for me, the way that I like the game to be played, and the way that I like to watch the game, I think Messi, he does, match to match, he's going to get more touches on the ball just because of where he plays on the pitch, and I think that he can make a bigger impact on the game than Ronaldo. There's not a wrong answer to it. I mean, if you told me that you're the certain team and your first pick is Ronaldo, I'd be like, I can work with that. You can work with that, and you can make that work. But and I know the Ronaldo Messi debate is, for soccer people, it's just like the LeBron Jordan debate for basketball people, and how soon soccer people forget, Maradona and Pele and those types of players. Me personally, I do think Lionel Messi is the best player, that the sport has seen. But I'm not going to sit here and say that Ronaldo is not the most gifted goal scorer that we've ever seen either. You can, it's not really comparing the same type of player. You can't really compare them as far as what they bring to a team. They're both great offensive players. They're both free kick specialists. They both won the Ballon d'Or, so many times. One thing that Messi gets docked for a lot is that he never went to the English Premier League. He never got to prove it in England. So I know that people hold that against him. Never playing in England. But he also, he did such great things in Barcelona that, I don't know if I would have left either, with what he was having going on in Barcelona. And so I personally would pick Messi, but if you didn't give me the pick and told me your first player you get is Ronaldo, I wouldn't be disappointed with that either, because they're both just phenomenal talents. And I know that people also, like to take into account their perceived personalities on the field or off the field. Ronaldo kind of gets that, for right or wrong, the selfish forward, tag. But if you're paid to score goals, that's what, that's what you do. That's what you do. So, and he's obviously done that a lot. So that's a tough one. It's not quite as tough as the Gatorade question you gave me the first time I was here. But I personally I would go with Messi.
There was a game that I watched this past, I believe it was Sunday, a team that kind of surprised me just on their play style, and I don't know, unless I'm kind of blinded by not knowing soccer much, but I thought Canada looked really good. And
Yes,
it's their first time making the Sweet 16, so to speak.
Yep.
And just seeing the way that they maintain their composure, and I think it was like the 92nd minute they went in and finally scored.
Very late. Yep.
Yeah.
Canada's a dark horse,
Davies,
I don't know
I think his name, number 19, I think. Yep. And he came off the bench off of an injury and made a difference immediately.
Yeah, and Canada does, they're well organized, and they of course there's that great history between their coach Jesse Marsh, thought he was going to get the USA job, and the USA kind of shunned him, so he likes to trash talk the USA any chance he gets in his interviews. But he's done well with Canada. I don't know the things about because people ask me all the time too, does the USA have a chance to win this tournament?
Now, that's going to be my next question for you.
Yeah, I mean, on any given night, and they can play with anybody on any given night, but can they do it 3 and 4 times in a row? Can they beat Spain and Argentina and France back to back to back? Can they get to that level? 3 straight matches to win a tournament like this? And I don't think we're there yet.
Talk about a run like that. Jeez Louise.
Yeah, could we? Could we go head to head with Argentina and win? Sure, but then 4 days later, can you do it against France, who play? And I just don't know if we're there yet, depth wise. And I think the lack of depth, talent, showed in us losing to Turkey with our reserves in, especially our back line. I think we didn't have most of our backline starters in, and we weren't very good, in the back. So I don't know if depth wise we can do it any given night. I mean, you saw what the U.S. did to Paraguay, just destroyed them, and Paraguay gets through Germany, who's one of the favorites. So any given night, could we get to the? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I would be disappointed if we don't beat Bosnia. I think that's one we have. And I think we should win around a 16 game based on the way it's laid out. Would I be surprised if it ends there? No. But would I be surprised if we make it to the quarterfinals? No, because I think on any given night we can play with anybody. I mean, I was at a game once in '99, maybe, at the old Crew Stadium, where we beat Brazil, who were the 5-time, and we beat them 1-0, and it was great. But then we played them 3 months later, and they beat us 5-1, and it was the same squads. So, and our goalkeeper on that night that we won 1-0, Casey Keller, was phenomenal. He played out of his mind, and we were great. Brazil maybe not so much, and we got to win. So can we play with anybody and keep advancing? Yeah, but to to play at the level that we need to play at for 2, 3, 4 matches in a row. That's tough. That's tough.
Yeah, it's like when you're in the NCAA tournament, you can get through the first couple rounds, but
Yeah.
then you're playing
Yeah.
championship caliber teams.
Correct.
The more you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So it would take a Herculean effort, and but also part of me wants to say, why not? They're
Home field advantage.
They're young. Yeah, home field advantage. They don't have to leave the country. They have a good manager. So why not? And what a moment it would be, to get to the semifinals or the finals, and heaven forbid if we won the thing. Just talk about turning the soccer world upside down.
Yeah.
So why? So very optimistic, and we are playing well, and I think too many people were panicking and overreacting about losing to Turkey. Because that wasn't. That was what it was, and the game didn't matter.
Well, Turkey also, coach, that like the first two games, like in the first game they played against Australia, didn't they have like an insane number of shots on goal and didn't score? And then the second game they had the same thing, and so they were due.
Yep.
They had to have a game.
They were unlucky, but I would love if we could get on a run and make it, semifinals, finals. But it's going to be tough. But we've got young talent. We've got a good manager. We've got the home field advantage. So why not? Might as well. But that's why they play the games, right?
That's right.
If games aren't played on paper.
That's it.
So, something I noticed about the USA team. Now it seems like they start the games off like the first half. They're aggressive. They're ball fire. And then it seems like once they get a lead, they get too comfortable and they start to make stupid defensive mistakes. They control the ball like 80% of the game, 75, 80% of the game, and then the second half, once they get a comfortable lead, they kind of.
Yeah, I and I don't know if that's kind of coaxed into them about because if you have a 2-0 lead in soccer, you should be able to see it out with just holding the ball, right, just keeping possession. So I would like to see us at times be you've got them down, just bury them, put them away, more of that killer instinct, and again, maybe it's something that they have a different tactical thought, that they bring from the training ground on why they wouldn't want to be that way. And they just want to see if they can see matches out. Because eventually, if you're playing someone like an Argentina or a Spain or someone, if you've got the lead, you have to be able to see it out, so maybe they're, maybe they're just trying to train that way. I don't know, but I'm with you. I'd like to, leading 3-0 is better than leading 2-0, so just go, obviously you don't want to, push too many numbers forward and leave yourself open to a counterattack that can, be costly. But if you're well organized and you're having the majority of the ball anyway, go. Go. Yeah, I agree.
Now thinking about this in a March Joe, you brought up the NCAA tournament. Okay, I'm thinking about this in a March Madness style bracket. Okay, out of the teams that are left and the pool of teams that are left in the World Cup, who's your Final Four, so to speak?
Well, I have Argentina and France in the finals again, but I think without knowing the bracket, I think the other two, and I don't remember if they're on the same side or not, but I think Spain and probably England. England has, again, they're pretty well coached. Harry Kane is a difference maker. When you have that star forward that knows how to score goals. So, but I can't remember what side of the bracket which is on. But so I'm free to be corrected. But Spain, England, Argentina, and France.
Okay, and then in the finals you have Argentina and France. And
Right
who do you
now, I
have
have
win?
Argentina and France.
Who do you have
You
winning the whole
know,
thing?
I and maybe it's just because I saw them play about 4 hours ago, but I don't. France is just so dangerous going forward. They're what they're able to do. The speed of their guys up top and the way they're able to not only hold the ball, but the way they're able to break out on a counter quickly and find Mbappe or Barcola. It's just they're scary. And I know that they won 3-0 this afternoon, but they hit the post 3 times. Mbappe missed one right on the doorstep. So I think they're just so dangerous, and they're playing well defensively as well. So right now, and again, they're the team I saw the latest. So when I see Argentina play and win 5-0, maybe I'll change my mind. But I think France right now I would have as the favorite to win the World Cup.
Okay.
Well, I was
Yeah,
gonna
go ahead, Joe.
ask him if he saw. Do you remember in the first round? But when Spain was playing, I think they were playing Cape Verde,
Mm-hmm.
and they showed Barcelona, and like there was all the Spain fans, and then there was like a little group of Cape Verde fans like in the middle, and they were cheering
Yeah.
because like they drew, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone else didn't do anything. They were like
Yeah.
like, oh well, we drew.
Yeah. And it happens. I mean, if you think back to the 2022 World Cup that Argentina won, Argentina lost their first group game to Saudi Arabia. It's like, things happen, and of course they had to win 2 of their knockout stage games in penalty kicks. So, any given night they could have been knocked off, which is the same thing. I mean, France could be knocked. Like I said, all it takes is an off night, and a team that tactically gets it right, how to defend them, and you're in for a different kind of match. But the way they played today, and the way that Mbappe has been playing and finishing, I just to me right now, France is the team to beat.
Because I remember watching the one game, and he kicked one from like far away, and he drilled it, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa.
Yeah.
I didn't see too many of those kind of goals where and it was just like
He's
a laser.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's fun, and he's still young too, which is scary.
Is USA the favored dark horse? Would you say?
Yeah, I think them and Canada. You brought up Canada. I think both of those teams, but also Mexico's been playing really well. Morocco made it to the semifinals in 2022. So you've got teams that kind of have a I don't want to call them a championship history because they've never won, but Morocco got to the semis. Mexico will be playing in their home country. So that's what's great about this tournament is it is like a March Madness in the later rounds. As you get to this stage where you got a lot of soccer powerhouse countries that are, and it's why you see so many games going to extra time and penalty kicks because luck plays a huge role in this too. But let's not fool ourselves. As much skill as there is, involved, you've got to have some luck involved too. So it's like Germany. How unlucky can you get?
Yep.
To
them and the Netherlands, both of them.
and the Netherlands, right? But I think the Germany, who, again, the great pedigree of past success in the World Cup and past just international success, and then to have the goal taken away, and then in penalty kicks, to have Paraguay try to hand it back to them by missing their last 2, and then just not being able to see it out, that's just unlucky, and that's all it takes is one night of being unlucky, and you've got to wait 4 more years. So, but like I said earlier, not to beat the dead horse, but I just don't know how you stop France right now. Their offensive, horses they have is just, no one's been able to slow that down yet.
Well, if you think about it, if Canada would just so happen to be able to get to a point to where they play USA, I think there would be a little extra with that, considering that we beat them in both the women's and men's hockey
Yes.
Olympics. I
Yes.
think there will be a little extra to come with that game.
Totally
you know.
agree.
So we beat them at their sport twice. Let's see if
Exactly.
not,
Exactly.
not
And that Canada losing to the U.S. in hockey just has to be the most devastating thing.
twice.
Yeah, twice. I know, but just overall, just having the U.S. beat Canada in hockey just has to. I mean, I don't know how the country functioned the next day. It was just, that just shouldn't happen in
Well, you knew work was
in their
quiet.
eyes. And, yeah.
you know that work was quiet for sure.
Oh, absolutely. But that's again that's what makes sports and athletics great. So.
Now, one other question I had for you when it comes to the World Cup, and I don't know if some people may not know this. When it comes to, say, Team USA, how do they go about selecting the pool of players who play on that World Cup team? Do they take some players from the MLS? Do they, what? How is that selected?
That is up to the U.S. Soccer. Be it the director of coaching, along with the coaching staffs and everything about the players that they want to invite to camps. So we do have more and more players playing overseas now, which is great. That's what we've needed all along. And we finally got there after the '94 World Cup that was held here in the U.S. We started to have players going to play overseas. Not many, but we have players going overseas. But we've got the last decade or so, with the amount of players from Dempsey and Donovan and Tim Howard, all the guys that have gone overseas and played, to our current group of guys that are playing overseas. It's just great exposure for them. Getting to play the game at a higher level. So it's just a matter of who the U.S. soccer deems as their top players, and they invite them to their camps and into their pool, and then ultimately again, between the coaching staff and their director of coaching and all of that, they whittle the roster down to whatever that final number is. But it's just a matter of knowing where your guys are and identifying them and knowing who's available. And it's that would be quite the process. But it is good to see that some of these international players that could maybe choose other countries to play for, are choosing the U.S. Based on where they're born or what their mother or father nationality was. And we've had 3 or 4 in the last World Cup cycle that it's kind of that it's kind of like a signing day in the NFL. Like, who's this guy, or the college, like, who's this guy going to sign with? Got the hat out and I'm going to Ohio State. It's kind of like that, where we the guy, my mind's drawing a blank now, but the guy that scored twice against Paraguay, just decided to play for the U.S. In the last year and a half. He could have also played as a German, because his father was German or something. So
is that the Florian?
Yeah. So getting players that are actively choosing the U.S. As their place where they want to play internationally, when they have other choices that could be considered better, but still joining the U.S., I think is huge. And then hosting the World Cup again is huge. I know soccer exploded, here in the U.S. after the '94 World Cup. Major League Soccer started 2 years later. And then the women won the World Cup here in '99, and it just exploded some more, especially on the women's side. So I think, coming out of this World Cup, especially if we do really well, I mean, if we make a run, semifinals, that sort of thing, I think it would be huge for not only our international standing amongst, soccer, but for the soccer in America. And then hopefully that leads to some changes. And this is a topic for another day that could last for 48 hours, but one of the reasons why we're still so far behind the rest of the world in soccer is because our youth system is just horribly broke here. Our model does not lend itself to competing internationally with South American teams and European teams. It's just not, but again, I could go on for a day and a half about youth sports in America, but so um, I forget where we were. Oh, the how the player pool is chosen. It's just the brain trust getting together and just here's who we want to have come in, and then going through the World Cup qualifying, and luckily we didn't have to qualify this year because we were the host. But we played had a good tournament so far, and like I said, I think the whole country would be disappointed if we didn't get by Bosnia. And then once you're in the final 16, kind of playing with house money, because you're not supposed to win. So just go. So it's going to be an exciting next 3 weeks for sure.
Hopefully, Cinderella puts her slipper on, and we see the run.
Again, why not?
Yep.
Why not?
Last question? What's been your overall opinion on the technology that they're able to use nowadays to determine if somebody's offsides, and taking away the human element from it and being able to rely on that technology? And then a follow-up question: I remember, I think it was the first game that USA played for this World Cup, where a player flopped.
Yeah.
And got tripped, but he flopped, and they overturned and gave him a
yellow
card.
card.
What's
Yeah.
your overall
Yeah.
opinion on that so far?
It depends on, I guess, what day of the week it is, because I like it that at the end you got the call right, because you would hate to see someone get sent off with a red card if they got the wrong number, or something didn't really happen, and you would hate for goals to be scored if a player was legitimately offsides. But to me, um, there also has to be kind of the spirit of the game, that okay, if you're offsides because you have a swollen ankle and you wore a size 10 and a half today instead of a size 10, so your foot's a little bigger, are you really offsides? And I know that they're FIFA's looking at language as far as making offsides where you're only offsides if the part of your body that's forward is a part of your body that can score the goal. So if you're offsides because your hands forward, you're not really going to be offsides because that can't score the goal. So they're looking at all these different languages that could change the rule. Um, Again, I like that we can get it right, but also, are we really looking at a toenail? That's kind of like, is that really and that does take away the human aspect of it, which is, it's the same debate you have with, baseball going to the automated balls and strikes, and the batters can challenge, pitches and stuff. It's like, do we really need all that? But in the same time, if a guy's out at first base and he was really out, you want to make sure you get the call right. So the same thing in soccer. I think if it's something that was, but it's also, I don't think they use it. Like I know that I think, if I remember right, they can't use it to, if they call it a goal kick and it should have been a corner kick, they can't use it to change it from goal kick to a corner kick. And to me, that's just like, why would you not? That's taking an advantage away from So I don't think they always, apply it in the right ways, and it's kind of inconsistent, and even even going to VAR, it's also an opinion then of the VAR. Do we want the referee to take a look at this, or do we not want him to take a second look at this? So, I could be convinced one way and then also the other way, but ultimately, I like getting the calls right, especially if it impacts the game. But I also think that it's tough when the GPS on the ball and the players are so where you can just see that because the guy had broke his nose and it's a little longer today that he's offside. So
Yeah.
it's just a tough situation. I don't know how you relegate it or regulate it. So because I mean they teach the assistant referees now. If it's a close play, don't even put your flag up. Let VAR sort it out. And I don't know if that's the way that we want to go. I do like it, like you said, from the USA game where they took back the yellow card and gave it to the guy for simulation. And again, if you watch the Premier League or La Liga or whatever, they've taken red cards back because they've looked at something and like, oh, that wasn't in the box or whatever it may be. So those kind of situations I like. Offsides, I get it, but at the same time, it's kind of like baseball where you miss that umpire human error, balls and strikes or that sort of thing. So I don't know, that's so tough, and I guess there, and I guess it also depends on who you're rooting for, and if it's going to be in your advantage or not in your advantage. So
Yeah, because the
it's
one time they
inevitable
take it
that
away and it goes against you, like, oh, why
right,
did
and
you
like
know?
if we had
Yeah.
exactly. So I mean, but I don't see it going away, and technology is just going to get more and more advanced. I had a friend of mine that it's just some massive football guy, and he's texting me all the time because he's trying to watch it and he's trying to get into it, and you know he's like he likes he's the one that's like they should get every call right. And he was texting me and he's like, I don't understand football now. He goes, you guys have where they can see if the ball crossed the line to be a goal. They have the technology and they can see it down to the millimeter. And, they got a guy outside by his toenail. And he said, this fall, I'll be watching my Packers play and it'll be, they'll be bringing out 2 sticks and a chain to see if, we got a first down. He goes, we
Yeah.
know the technology is there to see a line and the ball,
Right.
and we're going to bring out 2 sticks and a chain.
I I brought that up to this year at my work. I was like, why don't we use this to get for a first down instead of a note card
Yep,
like that one guy used that one time?
exactly, exactly.
Well,
And then
and that's
I always
good.
laugh because they'll bring the chain and it'll be like that far, and then they got to carry the chain back to the middle of the field, and they put the ball down, and then as soon as they put the ball down, the center grabs it and moves it anyway. So it's like
Yeah.
where's the yeah. Anyway,
Where's the ball actually?
yeah,
It,
exactly,
it's
exactly.
funny. Oh, because I remember in the Premier League I was watching and I had a team because I bet on the game, and I needed this team. It was tied 1-1, and I needed this team to
Hmm.
score, and they scored. And then they look at it, and they had that line, and the guy's pinky toe is over offsides by like that much. And I was like, oh come on, man! Like,
Yeah,
and then the other
yeah,
team goes down, scores, and I lose. That's just
yeah. Yeah.
Now,
So again, it's also based on if it's in your favor or if it,
yep.
takes something away from you, so, but I don't think it's going away,
Mm,
so I think it's here and it's here to stay. It'll just be how they tweak it and how they use it and how it evolves. But, you know, I don't think, any technology that they've implemented and not just in soccer, but baseball, football, it's not going away. Basketball, it's here to stay.
one thing that Joe mentioned that the NBA could take from FIFA is whenever they did reverse that yellow card from
Oh
okay, this
yeah.
is a foul, it's not a foul,
Hmm.
to the NBA, how they're nonstop flopping.
Yeah.
Everybody's on the ground. It's like soccer.
Hmm.
Everybody's on the ground hoping
Yep.
for a flag, or whatever. And he's like, man, if the NBA could take what soccer is doing and reverse,
Hmm.
like, oh, he flopped, now it's a foul on
Yeah.
you, that team gets 2 free throws or something,
Yep.
or whatever.
Yep.
That'd be something that they could
And
take from it.
that's probably coming in the future. I would not doubt it because I know that like a few years ago, they looked into how the offensive players were drawing fouls, in their jump shots, jumping in. So they're going to look at all this, I'm sure, and find a way to try to get the flop out of the NBA because you're right. It's not soccer level yet, but they're trying.
I mean,
Yeah.
whenever a player gets 83 points in a game and he has 44 foul shots to get him there, it's a
Yeah.
problem. It's for sure a
Yes. That's
problem.
a that's a problem for sure. Absolutely.
But is there anything we didn't touch on today that you think you'd like to bring up, whether it's about the World Cup, whether it's about your upcoming season, anything like that you think we might
No,
have
I
missed?
just want to, first of all, thank you guys for having me back again. I can, hang my hat on being the first two-time, two-time guest. But I can't say it enough. How great it is. I think that the platform that you guys are giving to, the local athletes and in the area. Um, and as far as the World Cup goes, I encourage people to, continue to give it a chance, because it is the most watched sporting event in the world. And these next 3 weeks are going to be really fun. And then lastly, both Merida High School soccer programs, invite everybody that may listen to this. We both open up on that Friday, August 14th at Merida College. Girls had a historic season last year. They lose 13 seniors, so we'll see how they are able to piece it together. And then we'll open up after them at 8. We both always have high expectations, so invite everybody to stop to Merida College on that night, but then come out and see us at Jerry Brock Field in Devola. We'll have some brand new lights. It'll be nice and bright down there. Hopefully that keeps some of the bugs away from falling on your head
Yeah,
when you're sitting under those lights, because man, those bugs are those bugs are around. So no, just thank you guys for having me on. Like I said, I just love that what you guys are doing, especially highlighting the local high schools and colleges and athletics. So I really, really, really appreciate it.
of course. And one of the things that we'll try and do is, and if you'd be open to it, maybe we'll come down and do a soccer preseason preview with you and the team. If you wanted to pull a couple of players who you think will be the captains or anything like that, to have them on, do a little interview with them and you and
Absolutely,
um,
would love it.
I
Absolutely.
feel like we not just for football, but we'll do that for football as well,
Football.
and
Football, yes.
and volleyball and all the things, so.
Yeah,
But
we would love
if you'd be
that.
willing,
Absolutely.
that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. So
Yes, absolutely, guys.
we'll talk outside of here and set that up and
Okay, sounds
see
good.
what we come up with. But thank you again so much. This was our guest, head coach, boys soccer team, Marietta High School, Marietta Tigers, Todd Morris. My co-host Joe, and I'm Rob. And thanks again for watching Ro-JoSports.